Hi friends, this is Lauren Taylor. Thanks for joining me here on the Miss Ink Stamps YouTube channel. I'm going to be using some new products as well as a few older products for today's card using the Magic Collection. I'm going to use the Eagle of the Personalities stamp set, the one with the letter R on it. I also have a schoolgirl that I've stamped from the Best Sort stamp set. I've colored it in and also die cut it with the Best Sort coordinating dies. I've also die cut the talking hat die. I have a frame from the Modern Typeset frame die, and I'm going to be using the Stencil Magic Triangle stencils to do a little bit of stenciling on my background before I start stamping the really cool, I love the personality stamp sets, the eagle and the sentiments on this particular set to be able to create a really fun background. So let's jump into creating our background by starting with some stenciling. I'm going to use a photopolymer grip mat so that way my cardstock will stay in place as well as my stencil. I've cut this piece of white cardstock to be slightly smaller than A2 in size, which is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So just slightly smaller than 4 1/4 and 5 1/2. I've attached it to my grip mat as well as my stencil, and I'm going to start with ink blending in a very soft minty fresh ink color through the Magic Triangle stencil. So just giving it a pale, now it's minty, so it's got a little bit of a green tint to it, but I was going for a very pale gray blue color. And I really like how it turned out. I know it's a little hard to see here, but I just wanted a very subtle background to then stamp all of the different sentiments and types from the personalities stamp set. So I'm just going to use my Misty so that way I can stamp each sentiment or each image more than once in case I need to. And I'm going to start with the word intelligent. I'm going to use my frame to make sure I have it kind of equally spaced left, right, and the top in that center portion of the frame. And I'm going to use a combination of different colors. So I have other dye inks and I'm going to use the colors Shady, which is a kind of a deep cool gray color. And then I'm going to use Midnight, which is a little bit darker of a blue. And I'm going to use No Diving, which is a little bit brighter of a blue. So I'm going to stamp one of my stamps, clean it off, add another stamp, and then stamp with a different color. So that way I'm not using the same color over and over again. I want it to feel like it's got a different vibe, a different color, a different type, a different font for each of the sentiments. So I'm going to quickly jump through here. So just rotating between my ink colors, trying to make sure I don't have the same color next to itself and just mixing things up. And there's so many different words and definitions and images. I want to stamp this large eagle image, so I'm going to stamp it once on a post-it note so it's not so deep. I want it to be a little bit faded, and then I will have some overlapping sentiments and words over that image. So I'm stamping twice because these are like a fabric ink pad. So sometimes it doesn't, stamp perfectly or get enough color on the stamp itself. So I'm going to just keep stamping until I'm happy with how things turn out. I am really enjoying mixing up the different fonts and images and colors. I am trying to mix it up. Again, keeping the colors changing, keeping the fonts changing. I think this is a really cool stamp to make those like subway art kind of style backgrounds and features on the cards. I sometimes get, some comments when I cover part of these backgrounds, but know that the intention of this background is that it's a background when I make this card. I think just framing how this turned out, I think it looks really good. I was very impressed with myself on how this turned out. But just framing this card with the die cut that I have here would be a perfect card on its own. But I will add an image to the card. So don't be sad, please, if I cover part of this background. You can definitely replicate this card without adding any images, but I wanted this to be a background for my card today. So now I've added some thin foam adhesive behind the frame die, and I'm adding that to the front of this panel that I've created with the, again, personality stamp set. And I'm going to add my little schoolgirl just to the bottom right. I've also die cut the talking hat, and I cut a scrap piece of the same Kraft cardstock, and I used vintage photo distress ink to darken the part that I'm going to glue behind the eyes and mouth of the talking hat. I also used a blending brush just to add a little bit of ink to the talking hat die cut itself, just to darken up some of the edges. I'm going to grab that same foam adhesive that I used for the frame to cover behind my schoolgirl, and I will get her attached to the bottom right hand side of that card. I will then add foam adhesive behind the talking hat, and I'll add that to her head as well. I wanted it to come across like this schoolgirl is, has the talking hat on her head and is deciding what her, personality traits are and what house she would be best in this magic collection fandom. And to me, like, all these words and images are what is going through her head as the talking hat is determining which house she will be best in. There's a couple, more stamps that I want to stamp on this card, so I'm going to add them to the inside of the card. So let's go ahead and get our top folding A2 card base, and I'm going to use some adhesive, some tape runner to add the card front that I've assembled onto the front of an A2 card base. Then I'm going to grab my Misty, because I probably should have stamped these before putting my card together, but I'm going to stamp on the inside of my card. I'm going to take another one of those eagle inspired images, and it's kind of like a circle. It reminds me of a wax seal a bit. I think this would be really cool with the wax seal die set as well. And I'm going to stamp that one first in that darker blue, and then I'm going to stamp the sentiment in the gray color. I think this card is turning out really cool. I was really excited to see this stamp set coming out from Miss Ink Stamps. I have just this one personality house, but I definitely want to collect the rest, so I'm looking forward to getting a few more of these stamp sets from the latest release for myself. So again, I have on the front the different qualities of this particular schoolhouse, and then what matters most is believing in yourself on the inside of the card, which I just think is really cool. If you know the fandom, you know that the talking hat takes into consideration of what you want and what you think of yourself. So I'm really excited with how this card turned out. Let me know down below, are you sad that I covered my background, or do you think it looks cool as a background for this card? You can find supplies that I use listed down below in the description of this video. I hope you'll check out the latest release, and you can stay tuned for even more inspiration here on the Miss Ink Stamps YouTube channel. Bye!